So I think Luis definitely knew what he was doing, starting with two very energetic presenters. The next one, when I first saw him, he walked off the stage and walked back and forth into the audience. He's not going to do that today. He's promised me. Partly because he has a demo as part of his presentation. You may know him. He's an iOS dev. He's been on a journey for iOS that began the same time Swift was released. So he never had to spend time with Objective-C and doesn't have any scars from that. You might know his app Tasks. He's going to be talking about his unhealthy obsession with CloudKit. Please welcome Mustafa.
Awesome. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I think people are still recovering from last night, and I'm very happy for that because I'm doing a live demo. So maybe if it doesn't work, it still looks like it works. So yeah, I'm Mustafa. I've been an iOS developer since Swift released. I tried opening my book once, trying to learn Objective-C. I couldn't do it. I closed it back. Thankfully, Apple released Swift, and now I have a career. So I've been making apps for around 10 years. It started out in college. I made an app for college students. And then what happened is I went to WWDC one year, and I saw all these people having cool apps. So I decided to make cool apps. Right? Cool for me, not for others. And then what happened is, in that process, what happened is I knew iOS. I didn't know how to make a backend, right? There was a chicken egg problem. I want to make an app, but I kind of have to have a backend. So if I wanted to make something with it, I'd need to learn that. Luckily, there was Firebase, but I didn't want to add a dependency to my project. So I saw, like, first-party framework, CloudKit, let me try get started with it. No documentation back then, but that's how all things with Apple is these days. So today's talk, no. We're going to just be talking about 6 things, very easy. What is the basics of CloudKit, right? How does syncing work in CloudKit? How does fetching work in CloudKit? We're going to talk about subscriptions because Miguel didn't talk about subscriptions today. No, I'm kidding. This is CloudKit subscriptions. So these are how you subscribe to changes. And then we're going to talk about how sharing and collaboration works in CloudKit, and then some cool things you wish you knew about CloudKit. One thing is I went around Spain asking people, what's a word to describe something you like and you don't like at the same time, right? And I think someone from the audience, I won't name them, they told me this phrase in Spanish. It's called hijo de puta. So you can use it for something you like, and you can use it for something you don't like. So in some days, for CloudKit, I'm like, hijo de puta. And then some days, I'm like, hijo de puta. So yeah, that's my journey with CloudKit. So first things, basics. Does the clicker work? No, OK. So it's simple. How most databases work, you have rows, right? The rows go inside tables, and the tables go inside the database, right? Is this similar for everyone? Now in CloudKit, they have something similar where a row is called a CK record. A CK record can be any row. Next thing, a CK record goes into a CK record zone. So a zone can hold multiple types of records. Unlike a table in usual databases, a table can hold only one type of record. CK record can be anything. So a zone can store, say, a task, project, all kinds of different records. And then this record goes into something called as a CK database. So a little bit more into that. What does a record hold? So a CK record is nothing but a dictionary. Think about it as a very simple dictionary, key-value pairs. And the main 2 things that you want to know, it has an ID, as all records do, and it has a type. So it defines what kind of record it is. It can be a task, project, anything you want. These are the 2 main keys you want to know. And then the CK record zone has 4 things. It has the zone name. So if you want to categorize things into zones, say, for instance, for me, if I have a task manager, I have a bunch of tasks. They go inside a project. So I conveniently name my project as a zone. So a zone, and then an owner name, who owns that zone. Now what happens is when you share different records, you kind of end up sharing zones. So a zone, I could be the owner, and then you could be accessing my zone. So the owner name would be mine. The next thing is there are 2 types of zone. There's a default zone and a custom zone. Default, you get basic, straight out of the box, lesser functionality. With custom zones, you get a little bit more functionality. And then CK database, there are 3 types of database, very simple, public, private, and shared. So public database, anyone can read write to. So I made an education app back in the day. All the content for my education app, like courses, quizzes, content was all hosted in the public database. And then people could fetch from the public database. And then whenever they attempt a quiz, I would write and save their history into the private database. And then if they wanted to share that report with someone, it would go into the shared database for the person. So all of this goes inside something called a CK container. Now, the beauty about CK container is there's good and bad about it. I'll come to the bad later on, the hijo de puta part, you know. So CK containers, the good thing about it is you can have one container and share it across multiple apps. So it's not just if you have one app, you can have that same container used in the other app. So if someone's saving changes to one database, and if your other app wants to access it, you can have multiple CK containers in an app. So yeah, that's the basics of how it works. Now the next thing is syncing. But this would be boring if I just show you technical. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a sample app. Okay? This is a habit tracker, but unlike good habits, we'll track bad habits. Right? How many of you all have a bad habit like me? Force unwrapping optionals? Okay, no, I expected no hands. You all are bad programmers. So, and then using fatal errors? Okay, maybe in the required inits. And so yeah, and then biting nails. How many of you all have that bad habit? Okay, quite a few of you. I don't have it. This is not a representation of me. So to break it down, what we're going to do today is we have this thing. So what I've called it, you have a problem, right? And then inside a problem, you have bad habits. So for instance, my problem is coding. Inside that, I have 2 bad habits, force unwrapping optionals and using fatal errors. And then every time you make that mistake, we call that oopsie, like oops, right? I don't want to use oops because that's too technical. So yeah, you make, so then you have an oopsie every single time. Okay, so is this clear? Perfect. So now we're going to start going into the demo. I should have probably recorded the demo, unlike Meta, but hopefully my demo works, and let's see. So yeah, this is fairly simple. I have a project. Okay? And we're going to start with very simple. How do you sync a record in CloudKit? Okay? So it's very simple. Now, I have a record. This is any CK record object convertible. I'll come back to that. So the way you sync a record is first you need the object. So I have wrapped up my problem, my bad habit, and oopsie to conform to a type called CK record convertible. What does CK record convertible do? It's just an ID. It gives me the zone name. It gives me the zone ID, and it gives me the CK record. Now I'll come to how do you form a CK record. The way you build a CK record is 2 ways. You can build a CK record from scratch, right? That's the first time when you're creating a CK record, you create it from scratch. Let's go and see an example. So say, for instance, if I'm making a problem, right? And if I'm creating the CK record, if you see it here, I use this build CK record method. Now the way I build the CK record is 2 ways. If I've already fetched the CK record from CloudKit, I need to use something called the system encoded fields. What does the system encoded fields mean? You've already created this, or someone has created it, you fetched it, so next time you create it with the same metadata that it already had. Now, why is this useful? Say, for instance, I synced a record, and then you fetch that record, and you're syncing it again while I'm also syncing it. So there's some metadata that will help you avoid conflicts when you're writing to it. So yeah, the way you create a record type is simple. You provide a record type, and you provide a record ID. The record ID needs the record name, which is nothing but the ID for it, and the zone that it belongs to. So now over here, I come in. It's very simple. I've created the CK record, which is just nothing but, if you think about it, it's just nothing but CK record.init. Record type, I can call this a problem. And record ID would be nothing but the record name, which is nothing but a UUID with a string, right? So it's that simple, what it essentially is doing. And then you just pass it anything that you want, like a dictionary. You pass in the key that you want and the value you want to store. So now I have this helper function that converts everything. So I'll go back into my sync engine, where I'm going to write and sync record. So like I said, I write perfect code, so I can do force unwrapping and fatal errors. Please do not try this in your official projects. So guard let record, I have the function on object which says as CK record, right? Normal people would return from here, but I don't do that. Fatal error. Okay. The next thing is when you come in, now I have to sync this record. So task, again, I go in to sync this record. The way you sync this record is you need the database. So now to get the database, you go to the container, the CK container, and you ask for the database to which this object belongs. So I have the database now. Now the way you write to any database is as simple as this, database.add record. Right? So try exclamation mark, that's very important. Record. Cannot convert, okay, save. Right? This code would work 99 out of 100 times, right? The one time that it wouldn't work is if the record you're saving to, its zone doesn't exist. So what we're going to do is, for the first time, we're going to try and catch the error. So I'm going to go do catch the error, and I don't know how to write a catch. Very rare. So I catch the CK error, and then I catch the other errors. Over here, obviously, fatal error. Right? So what we do over here is, now I've caught the error. I only know there's only one possible error in my code. So if code error.code zone not found, only that time I have to do catch the error, else I'll just write a fatal error. Okay? You'll be shocked. My demo shouldn't crash. Okay? So yeah, if the zone is not found, I need to create the zone. So the way I create the zone is very simple. I go to my database, and I say save zone? Yeah, save a zone. So the way I get the zone is very simple. I just say record.zone, record ID.zone ID. Wait, try, exclamation mark. Okay, so I've saved the zone. Now I have to just create a nice little recursive function so that it keeps saving the record until it saves the zone. So I'm just going to call sync object again, because recursion is good. Yeah. So just like that, I've written the function to save a record. And this works. This is it. This is how much lines of code that you actually need to write to save any record in CloudKit. The next thing is deleting a zone. How hard can deleting a zone be, right? Let's find out. So let's zone equal to object.zoneID, else, what do we write? Fatal error. Perfect. You're catching on. Right? Now, the next thing is we have a task. We create we get the database, right? The database equal to container.database. Perfect. Auto-completion sometimes works. And then I have to just do delete record zone with ID zone. Try, exclamation mark. Right? That's how easy it is to delete a zone. Now the next thing is, how do I delete an object? Very simple. Guard let object equal to record ID equal to object dot secret record ID, else. Perfect. Okay, so task, the way to delete it is, again, I'll start copy pasting code at this point. So database.delete record with ID, record ID. Try, exclamation mark. Oh, wait. So yeah, that's exactly how simple it is to delete a record, delete a zone, save a record, and save a zone. So we've done all of that. Now the next thing is fetching. So syncing is done, right? I'll go back to the slide. Where is the slide? So syncing is done. The next step is fetching. So the way fetching works is very simple. How many of you all know about cursor-based fetching? Yeah, so basically what happens is CloudKit, you ask it changes in a particular database. So if you want changes in your private or public or shared database, then it gives you all the zones in that database. Once you have all the zones, you fetch all the changes in a particular zone. So the way over here, if you see, I have this convenient function written fetch changes, right? So more coming. So until there are changes, CloudKit will tell you more coming is true or false. When it is false, you stop. Until then, you keep recursively calling it and hope it doesn't bug out. So over here, I have my database for the scope, and then I have my token. So every time CloudKit gives me a token after fetching changes, I save that token into the database. And these are all the new zone IDs. So the way it happens is let database, let result equal to database.fetch database changes since token. Try, exclamation mark. Try, exclamation mark. Oh, wait. So now I've fetched all the changes. Now, just to show you the result of this, how I handle it, if more coming, I get it in results, so result.more coming. If I get the token back, I set the token. And then I keep saving all of these new zones that I've got into this array of new zone IDs. And then if there are any deleted zones, I also get it in the same request. So result.deletions, I get all the deleted zone IDs. Now, it's that simple. Just before I show you, so like we have a Mac app that is running over here, which is empty. And then on the right, you can see QuickTime bugging out. Mustafa's iPhone, plug out, plug in. OK, we'll come back to debugging that later. So yeah, now the next thing is I have all the new zones that have come, but I also have local zones already present. So if I have problems already present in my database, I have to fetch all the zones against that. So what I've done is co-data request, problems.fetch request, managed object. You see I force unwrap because you always expect it to be there. And then you have all the zone IDs. I just map them to the zone ID, and I have an array of all the zones I have present locally. Now the next thing is, in order to fetch all the changes, I think this should be better, right? So now in order to fetch all the new changes in that zone, there's something called a zone configuration. So I have all the zone IDs I want, and I have to get the zone config for all of these things. Now zone config, if you see the initializer for it, init. OK, so you have to supply the previous token, how many results you want in a particular request. The number can range from 1 to, I think there's a max of 300, but they don't explicitly specify. So you want to put a number between 1 and 200, 250. And then you have the desired keys. So if, for instance, your CK record object is very heavy, you have images, assets in them, you can say just fetch these keys and avoid fetching these keys, so your request is lightweight. So over here, if you see, I have already saved all my tokens in the user defaults. I'm just fetching it and populating this. And so now I come into CK fetch record fetch changes. So now this function, CK fetch changes, it's a very simple. So we've seen how to do it in the async await way, right? And now we're going to see how to do CK record operations. So this is the old school. How many of you all know CK operations or NS operations? Right, so this is how the old way of doing it. There are some APIs that are present in the old way, which is not present in the new way, and it's more convenient. So we're hoping Apple brings parity to them sooner or later. So yeah, CK record fetch zone changes operation. What you do is you supply all the zone IDs to it, and then you supply the configurations for each zone. Now it's very simple. You get completion blocks. If any record was changed, you get the record and the result, and then you keep appending to the array of records to save. And then you have record IDs that were deleted. So any record IDs were deleted, I append it to the array. Very simple. Now, whenever there is a change, after it fetches anything from the zone, it also supplies a change token to me. So I have to keep that change token, because the next time when I supply that change token, it will fetch only the new changes since then. So it doesn't keep sending you the old changes over and over again. And the next thing is, the reason why I didn't write this code and I actually copy-pasted it, because I forget continuation.resume. And I forget database.add operation. So yeah, never forget this thing. You'll end up debugging, why is my operation not running? And it's just because of this one little line of code. So yeah, that's pretty much how you fetch changes and how you sync changes. So if I were to run this, hopefully, it will work. But wait, that's not cool. Wait, I need to show you the iPhone first. I have to fix this bug. QuickTime. File, new movie recording. OK, so this is my current iPhone, which is more or less with the updated app, right? And then I have a Mac app which doesn't have this data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the Mac app. And I think you all might not believe me, so I'll put a breakpoint. I'll put a breakpoint on line 158 where it's actually saving the records. And we'll see if it actually fetches all these changes. So I got a breakpoint. It's fetched 26 values. So if you see, it's fetched all the changes from CloudKit, and it's added it and saved it over here. So if I remove this, there you go. The iPhone and the Mac app, we wrote an entire sync layer from scratch. So yeah, that's like, and if you notice, none of the assertion failures or like force unwraps or fatal errors ever crash, because code is perfect. Now, to show it a little bit more, so when I push changes from the Mac, it should update on the iPhone, right? So let's select 31st September. This is going to be tricky, because as soon as I select the Mac app, it's going to bring it to the foreground. Let me shrink this. Yeah. So let's choose a date which is close by. So say 31st of, which month is this? May. OK. So let's go to May. 31st of May. So if you see, as soon as I select 31st of May, obviously not like that. OK. We'll choose another day. 27th of May. So as soon as I select 27th of May, it should, the Wi-Fi is not working. Oh, no, it's working. So it immediately reflects the changes. But like, you think this is happy case, so let me just like select multiple things. Now I'm confident. Right? So the changes keep appearing in. But wait, let's take it further up a notch, right? Let's add a new bad habit. So as soon as I add a new bad habit here, say for instance, add a bad habit. What's a bad habit we have in programming? And oh yeah. Let's make it fun. Insulting Android devs. Add bad habits. So as soon as I do that on the iPhone, it appears. Right? So so this is exactly, so the goal of the talk is just to show you CloudKit is very nice. Sometimes it works like this demo, if I may, hijo de puta. So if it works, it's hijo de puta. If it doesn't work, it would have been like, you all know the other version. But yeah, so that's pretty much how it works. Now one thing, you saw, as soon as I made changes on my Mac, it automatically showed up on my iPhone. Am I polling? Am I going on fetching with CloudKit? No. So that's where the last part comes in. It's something called CK subscriptions. So what CK subscriptions are, you can subscribe to changes. Now the way it works, you know how you subscribe to changes. There's WebSockets, there's other ways. CloudKit, what it does, it is silent push notifications. We all know, everyone knows silent push notification doesn't work great. But in the case of CloudKit, it works really well, is because when the app is in the foreground, you want to know changes. So when the user obviously backgrounds and foregrounds the app, you want to keep fetching changes every time. But since the app is in foreground, what we want is we just need a silent push notification to come in, and so that we can observe it, or when we get the silent push notification, fetch new changes. And the way you get silent push notifications is very simple. I always forget the syntax of this, so helper functions to the rescue. Yeah, so the way you create a subscription is just these 4 lines of code. This is how you create a silent push notification. If you want, when a bad habit is triggered, you can also add notification body, title, all of those things, and it will appear on the other device. And then, again, it's as simple to save it as well. So how you save it? Try force unwrap, container.private database, save the particular subscription. So once you add a subscription, the other devices automatically get changes. So whenever a problem, or since I've subscribed to all changes in the database, anything that happens in the database gets transferred to the other device. So yeah, that's pretty much how saving, syncing, and subscriptions work in CloudKit. So yeah, the next thing's sharing. You might think sharing is really complicated, but sharing is not complicated. Because since we've already written our functions in such a way that fetch changes from a zone and everything, you get sharing kind of free out of the box. And the way you initiate a share is very simple. So you can share 2 things. You can either share an entire zone, or you can share a single record. Now, for instance, if you want to share an image with a friend, the CK record would be your photo, and you just share that. If you want to share an album, you can share your entire CK record zone, which would be an album, and all the contents within that zone get shared to the user. The way you create it is very simple. You have 2 initializers for a root record or a root record, which is sharing a CK record, and then record zone ID, which is to share the entire zone. So you create the share easily. You have to present the share with a UI cloud sharing controller. So it works as simple as just these 2 lines of code. You select the container and the share, and that's it. The other person gets it. You have to observe for when they are getting the CK share, you just have to call a small function to accept the share record. So that's how sharing is. Now the final thing, cool stuff. First, no auth required. I do not require sign in with Apple, sign in with other social media accounts, nothing, because most people have an iCloud account by default. Yes, in some cases it might be logged out, but you can observe for that if there's an account or not present, and then you can accordingly do it. So for instance, one of the best use cases, I worked at a company, and we wanted a login on the iPad to reflect on the iPhone immediately. So what we did is we synced their refresh token, right, or a session token to identify them into CloudKit. And then as soon as they launch it on the other device, you can automatically detect their user ID and automatically log them in because, well, you can. The next thing is, very cool thing is CK assets. The way assets work in CloudKit is very good. You can just sync any data type, anything that is a binary, into a CK asset, and all it takes is just these 2 lines of code. So if you see record, I have data, and then I just have to pass a CK asset, which is a reference or a file URL to anything present locally. The next thing is public databases are great. This was the education app that I had made. All this content was saved into public database. Anyone can read from this. You can select who can write to a public database with special permissions, so that's great. Next thing is, Apple once upon a time had a limit on how much you can use CloudKit with. First thing is, it's limitless because the other person is paying for it. Like, your users are paying for it, so it's great. You don't have to pay for server costs or anything. And the thing with public database and everything, they had this slider where you could just drag on. It went up to 1 petabyte of storage for a particular group of users. So I don't think I've ever met a single person who's hit iCloud limit issues. So until then, there's no limit. And then the ease of encryption. Like if you want to do, you all know private key management, public key management, all of this is really chaotic. But if you want to use CloudKit to sync encrypted values, you just have to use ckrecord.encrypted values and then pass in your thing. So it handles that encryption and decryption like automatically, so you don't have to. Next thing is the console. It keeps getting better every year. It's good. It's kind of good. The next thing is, a lot of people complain, right? What about Android? Luckily, they do have a RESTful API, right? So you can implement it. You can have it CloudKit on a web app on Android, because there are REST APIs that work. It might not work the best. It's a little bit here and there, but it's possible. So if you're complaining, hey, I can't use it on Android, you can. But why would you? The next thing is, there are a few things. You always have to go into the console. There's a lot of problems. Like if you're trying to fetch something just by the record ID, or you're trying to fetch something just by a title or some key that is present, you have to mark that particular key as queryable. So these are like good to know things. Next thing is this one button, deploy schema changes. You cannot undo this. So once you push something to CloudKit in production, you can never go back. Next thing is, CloudKit has, so the private database has a ton of functionality. The shared database gets lesser functionality, and the public database gets lesser functionality. So for instance, if I want to do really custom CK subscriptions, so if I want to do collaboration, when someone creates a task and assigns it to me, right? And I want it to send a push notification to this user. You can do that if it is in my private zone, but I cannot do that if it's in your shared zone. So there's some functionality available for private databases, which is much more like, yeah, you get it. Next thing is, everyone's heard of this, NS persistent CloudKit container. Yes, so this is like, I've had friends who've used this. They've lost data. They've lost so many things. Just don't do this. Like, since syncing is easy and people don't know it, they didn't do it. But this one line of code can help your product initially and destroy your product later. The next thing is, then there's something called CK Sync Engine. Apple has introduced this to make it easier, so you have a little bit more control. And then if you want maximum control, you do what we just did, which is not that complicated. And yeah, finally, I was a kid who created a really cool email address when I was a kid. I thought I was very cool. The thing with iCloud container names, be careful. Once you create this name, you cannot change it. Like ever. There's no way to change it. There's no way to delete it. So that name sticks with you for life. So when you're creating your iCloud container names, please choose wisely. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I have created, I realized I love CloudKit so much, so I finally created this open source CloudKit package, which is database agnostic. You can use any DB, and you just have to send, like, sync this thing, sync that thing, and it fetches all the things and just sends it to you. So MY CloudKit, it's available, it's open source, and I use it in production, so I'll hopefully maintain it. And yeah, that's pretty much it, so thank you so much. Yeah, thanks. Awesome.
Very nice. We have a lot of questions, some of them specific. So let's start with a very specific one. You showed delete zone.
Yes.
And so when would someone need delete zone?
So if you have an album of photos, and if your photos are contained in the zone, and you delete the album, and do you want to delete that? So you would do it. For me, for instance, in my tasks thing, each project is a zone. So when a user deletes a project, I kind of delete the entire zone, so I don't have to cascade delete all tasks and all of those things. So it's just simpler.
So it's a way of grouping them.
Yes.
Thank you. What are the best practices, I'd say, other than forced try and fatal errors, of debugging CloudKit problems like syncs?
Again, it comes down to, like, it's a little difficult. You assume Apple has tested it well enough. And I think most of the problems with CloudKit I've realized is, first, I used to blame Apple for it, very convenient. But they do it's kind of very reliable. And I've never written tests, so I wouldn't know. But yeah, you could write tests for these things, but I think it's just trial and error, most of it.
Do you recommend letting users turn CloudKit Sync on and off within your app?
Yes, you could do it with our implementation, but with NS persistent CloudKit container and all of these things, it gets a little complicated. You can paywall the CloudKit sync changes and all of these things, but I would say users don't know what they want, so don't give them the toggle. But if they really know what they want, hide that toggle.
Okay. Another question is, if a developer's using core data or Swift data, you get this automatic CloudKit syncing. When would you recommend not doing that? And if they do use automatic syncing, are there things that they need to do in addition with this to make sure things work more smoothly?
So as a developer, I've realized initially you use as many libraries as you can and get free out-of-the-box stuff. And then as you grow up, you realize these black boxes are not that great. So you don't want so many black boxes in your life. The thing with NS persistent CloudKit container and the Swift data automatic sync is you don't know how it handles migration. Because you assume it just handles it when you write your migration. You assume it just works, right? There's no way to force sync stuff. So if your user is complaining, hey, this is not syncing to that device, like, you can't write an email saying, oh, it should work. Apple's told me it works. So that's the reason why I prefer a little bit more granular control. And since it's not that hard to write it, which most people think it's hard, people think CloudKit is, like, insanely hard. But with a few lines of code, the goal today was to break the myth that it's hard. So yeah.
It's a similar question. When you use it with Swift UI, what changes? The question is, didn't Apple promise us that syncing would happen all by itself with Swift UI?
They promised us a lot of things. They promised us Swift UI would be stable, but no. But I think what you sync with is completely different from your UI level. So sync has nothing to do with UI level. This layer just interacts with your database and with CloudKit. So you should write better code in that case.
Wow.
No, I'm kidding.
How do you sync or detect changes in the public database?
So again, the same cursor method. So you can also observe for changes in the public database, just how we observe for changes in the private database right now. So you just have to do container.public database, observe changes for particular record or all kind of things. So just like that, and you get a silent push notification back if your app is in the foreground. But if your app is being backgrounded and foregrounded, ideally you just want to fetch when it's being foregrounded. But yeah.
Please thank Mustafa.
Thank you so much.
Very nice.
Awesome.